We're often told not to compare apples to oranges, but we do. We compare all the time. We compare ourselves to other people, we compare different people, and we compare different things. When's the last time you shopped on Amazon without comparing different options? So comparisons are important. The question is, how do we make them? How do we make comparisons in English? How do we make comparisons in Chinese? And are they the same process? Before we dive in, remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button so you'll be the first to know when I release another video. In English, we often make comparisons by adding a suffix "er" to an adjective. So take the adjective big. You add "er" and you get bigger. Watermelons are bigger than apples. You take the adjective fast and you add "er" and you get faster. Planes are faster than trains. In Chinese, there's a similar process, and that is using the suffix guo. So if you take the adjective da for big and add guo, da guo, you could say 西瓜大过苹果. Watermelons are bigger than apples. If you take the adjective kuai for fast and you add guo, you get 快过. 飞机快过火车. Planes are faster than trains. So the process looks very similar, except using the suffix guo for comparison isn't the most common mechanism for comparisons in Mandarin. It gives the sentence a literary feel, and it is a mechanism that is more common in dialects such as Cantonese than Mandarin. So then what is the more common mechanism for comparisons in Mandarin? That mechanism is the use of the word bi, which means to compare. So let's say you wanted to compare two things to see which is bigger. The two things are watermelons and apples, 西瓜 and 苹果. The first thing you want to do is specify these two things with the bigger one in front. So 西瓜 first and then 苹果. The second step is to insert the word compare, 比, between the two. So 西瓜比苹果. Watermelons compare to apples. And finally, you put the adjective at the very end. So 西瓜比苹果大. Watermelons compared to apples are big. That's how you do it. 西瓜比苹果大. Watermelons 比 compared to apples 苹果, and then the adjective 大. To give another example, planes are faster than trains. First, you have the two things to be compared. The faster one first, planes 飞机, and then trains 火车. 飞机火车. Insert the word compare 比 between the two. 飞机比火车. And then the property, the adjective 快 fast at the end. 飞机比火车快. Planes compared to trains are faster. Planes are faster than trains. So that's how you make a typical comparison in Mandarin. What if you wanted to specify the differential? What if you wanted to know how much bigger or how much faster? The thing to do is to put the differential at the very end of the comparison after the adjective. So let's say watermelons are bigger than apple. How much bigger? A lot bigger. For the a lot part, you could say 很多, you could say 多了, you could say 太多了. Okay, let's just go with 多了 for now. Now, we already know that watermelons are bigger than apples can be said as 西瓜比苹果大. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the 多了 after the 大, in which case I would have 西瓜比苹果大多了. Okay, watermelons are a lot bigger than apples. 西瓜比苹果大多了. If I were to take our other sentence, planes are faster than trains. 飞机比火车快. How much faster? Faster by 3 hours, let's say, 3个小时. Then I could say 飞机比火车快3个小时. I put the 3个小时 after the property, after the adjective 快. 飞机比火车快3个小时. Planes are faster than trains by 3 hours. What if I wanted to negate the comparison? What if I wanted to say that planes are not faster than trains? Now that can be true sometimes because to take a plane, you kind of have to be at the airport 2 hours before takeoff. And then once you arrive, you go through customs, and that's another hour. And airports tend to be far away, so you have to travel to the airport. And all that time adds up, making it not necessarily faster than a train when it's a short trip. Train stations tend to be right in the city center. Okay, so planes are not faster than trains. How do you say that? Now, beginners often make the mistake of negating the adjective. So they would say something like, 飞机比火车不快. That would be wrong. You don't put the 不 before the adjective 快. You have to put it somewhere else. You have to put the 不 before the 比, the word compare. There are two ways to negate the claim 飞机比火车快. You could add the word 不 before the 比, in which case you get 飞机不比火车快. Okay, that's one way to negate it. Another way is to remove the 比 altogether and replace it with 没有. 飞机没有火车快. There's a slight difference between the two. When I add a 不 before the 比, what it does is it negates the original comparison. So the original comparison, let's say, is A is greater than B, A 比 B 大. If I add a 不, giving A 不比 B 大, what it's saying is A is not greater than B, which implies A might be lesser than B, or A might be equal to B. Okay, so it includes two situations, equality and being lesser. Okay, this is A 不比 B 大. Whereas if I were to use the 没有 option, A 没有 B 大, I'm left with only the lesser option. A is lesser than B. It does not include the situation where the two are the same. So therein lies the difference. A 不比 B 大 is A is lesser than or equal to B, whereas A 没有 B 大 is A is lesser than B only. If I were to apply that to our previous sentence, 飞机不比火车快, what it's saying is that planes might be slower, or planes might be the same speed as the train. And when I say 飞机不比火车快, it is usually said to refute a previous claim when somebody said that planes are faster than trains. It's a refutation of that. At least that is implied. Whereas when I say 飞机没有火车快, what I'm basically saying is that planes are slower. Planes are not as fast as trains, and it doesn't need to have any prior context. When I use the 没有, when I say 飞机没有火车快, I could add another element to it. I could say planes are not quite as fast as trains, and that quite can be expressed using 这么 or 那么. Okay, 这么 or 那么. There's no difference between the two, so pick any one. So I could say 飞机没有火车那么快. Planes are not quite as fast as trains. Now, what happens if there's a differential in the sentence? What if the original sentence is planes are faster than trains by 3 hours? 飞机比火车快3小时. Okay, if I wanted to negate that, how do I do so? Okay, the process is different from what we did before. What we're going to do now is we're going to keep the 比 in the sentence, but add 没有 in front of it. Okay, this is different from the previous 没有 process where the 比 is removed. In this case, we keep the 比, we don't remove it, but we add a 没有 in front of it. Okay, so in this case, if the plane is not faster than the train by 3 hours, I would say 飞机没有比火车快3小时. 飞机没有比火车快3小时. What that does is it tells us that the plane is not faster than the train by 3 hours. The plane can still be faster. It's just not 3 hours faster. Let's try another example. If someone said the cell phone is $100 more expensive than the computer, 手机比电脑贵100块. If I wanted to negate that, I could say 手机没有比电脑贵100块. Okay, I have both the 没有 and the 比. 手机没有比电脑贵100块. The cell phone is not $100 more expensive than the computer. So as you can see, the use of 比 to make comparisons in Chinese is important, but it can be a little complicated. So let me do a little recap. Are American people taller than the Chinese? I could say 美国人比中国人高. Americans are taller than the Chinese. Or I could say 美国人不比中国人高. That is to refute my previous statement, 美国人不比中国人高. Americans are not taller than the Chinese, meaning the Americans could be shorter or the two can be the same height. I could also say 美国人没有中国人高. Americans aren't as tall as the Chinese, meaning the Americans are shorter. I could also say 美国人没有中国人那么高. Americans aren't quite as tall as the Chinese with the quite. I could add a differential. Let's say the differential is 5 inches, 5寸. 美国人比中国人高5寸. Americans are 5 inches taller than the Chinese. Or I could refute that. I could say Americans are not 5 inches taller than the Chinese. 美国人没有比中国人高5寸. Now, when making a B comparison, there is another device I can add, and that is the adverb 更 or 还 to exaggerate the property. For example, if my original sentence was 美国人比中国人高, I could add the 还 before the 高 to give 美国人比中国人还高 to mean Americans are even taller than the Chinese. What that implies is that the Chinese are very tall already, but the Americans are even taller. 美国人比中国人还高. Or if my original sentence was 飞机比火车快, I could say 飞机比火车更快. Planes are even faster than trains. That implies that trains are very fast already, but planes are even faster. 飞机比火车更快. Now, when using an adverb like 更 to exaggerate the property, you cannot have a differential at the end of the comparison. So you cannot say something like 美国人比中国人更高5寸. If you have the 更, you cannot have the 5寸. You can have only one or the other. Finally, I want to talk a bit about implicit comparisons. Comparisons where you're not specifying what you're comparing the thing with. For example, I can say something like Americans are taller. Taller than who? It's not made explicit. Maybe the object of my comparison follows from the earlier part of the conversation, in which case I won't specify it here. Or maybe I'm just saying Americans are taller in general compared to the general population. So I can say something like Americans are taller, and the way you say that in Chinese is you use the term 比较. 美国人比较高. Americans are taller. Or I could say something like college students are smarter. 大学生比较聪明. Okay, 比谁聪明? That doesn't have to be made explicit. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button so you'll be the first to know when I release my next video. I'll see you next time.